Three kids go missing. Their vehicle discovered at a popular Texas mall 50-plus years later, and no one has seen or heard from them. Several theories and new information is discovered along with a mysterious letter. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the New York Times best-selling author of dozens of true crime books. I've dedicated the past 25 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me next for a special Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps. The Fort Worth 3, Part 2. If you haven't heard Part 1 of this Crossing the Line 3-part special, go back a week and catch up. Then please return here, of course, to continue listening. The three girls, Rachel, Renee, and Julie, head out to the mall on December 23rd, 1974, at about 10:30 or 11 a.m. By 4 p.m. that day, which is a critical time seeing that Renee needed to be back for a party she desperately wanted to go to, the girls have not returned and family members are now concerned. I want to pick up once again with Kelly Arnold, Rachel's cousin, who keeps things real and, in my opinion, isn't afraid of the truth. Very important when we begin to talk about these cold cases. And so when do the police become involved?
They had contacted the police a couple of times, but they wouldn't come to the mall until after the mall had closed and the mall had cleared out. I guess they thought the girls were being teenage girls and were still in the mall and, and I can see where they would kind of think that. So at about 11 o'clock, the mall had cleared out. I'm not really sure if they actually came to the mall because the police reports show that they were taken by telephone. Definitely that night about midnight is when all the police reports were filed. There were previous calls to them, though.
Do the police begin to search for them?
No. They were listed as runaways for, I believe, at least 6 months, and then they went over to homicide.
They were listed as runaways for 6 months?
A 9-year-old.
No evidence was collected?
None. No, they didn't take fingerprints from the car. They did, look in the car. They did go to each girl's house. They didn't, I would think that you would go through their belongings in the room to see if you could find anything, like phone numbers or, did she have a boyfriend that nobody knew about? Did she have an ex-boyfriend or somebody who was bullying her or, anything?
This case is botched right there. Even an incompetent search of the vehicle could have yielded something in the form of evidence. Even if they had just simply made the car a crime scene, secured it, dusted it for prints, and did a forensic search. This is early days, lest we forget, of forensic evidence collection. It's wrong what they did. We know that now. But that is what we are left with. Some purchases made in the mall were found inside the vehicle. So one could assume, and I am emphasizing that they made it back to the car. But we cannot say that with 100% certainty because anything is possible until proven otherwise. Terry Mosley, Renee's boyfriend and Julie's brother, offers some insight into Rachel and her situation, which, as we discussed briefly in episode 1, could play a role in this case. Rachel was married at 16 to a much older guy, Tommy, and Rachel is also a stepmother to Tommy's child. And if you recall from last week, Terry didn't really know Rachel all that well.
Her and Renee went to school together at Southwest, and I went to Pascal. And Rachel was older, and Rachel was married. And one day she came over and she had it's 1974. This was earlier in the year. She came over and showed up. She's got a 1972 Oldsmobile. Nice car. And she took us riding around, smoking cigarettes and just riding around and stuff and showing off her new car. And I think I met her maybe one other time. And her husband that she had married, she's still a senior in high school. Her husband, he inherited his parents' house, I believe, because they had both passed away. She took us over there and showed us her house because, I mean, it was a lot nicer house than in our neighborhood. I mean, whole different neighborhood, way nicer neighborhood. And she showed me and Renee around her house. And I don't really remember anything about it other than I saw her house. And then we left. Her husband, Tommy, to this day, 50 years later, I've never met the man personally. I know that sounds strange, but he didn't have nothing to do with us back then, and I've never actually talked to him, shook his hand, not that I'm aware of, never in my life, and it's been 50 years. But I didn't meet him back then because he was probably at work.
So those within that close-knit circle of the group begin to look at Rachel's husband, Tommy, suspiciously, simply by osmosis, because he's not saying nothing.
That's the only extent I really knew Rachel, was just through Renee. Like, my sister would probably be here today if it was not for Rachel and Renee's friendship, because that's how Julie got to go. Otherwise, she'd have never, that stuff wouldn't have never happened.
When do you realize that day, or does everybody start to realize maybe something's wrong?
Well, for me, I stayed with that friend of mine till he left. And I kind of conked out. I was just laying around either on his bed or the couch or somewhere at his house next door to my house. I kind of fell asleep for a little while. And I woke up and I think it was probably getting close to time for them to return, which to me, what Renee had told me, 2:00. Her mom had told her, you've got to be home for sure by 4:00 because of this party you've got to get ready and go to. So around 2 or so, I'm sitting, and then 2 comes and goes. And I'm starting to think, well, where are they at, you know? And 2:30 probably comes, and then it's getting closer to 3, and I'm starting to, there's no way to contact people back then. So you don't know where they are, what they're doing. So I'm starting to wonder, well, where are they at? Because she's not coming back yet. And we, like I say, we wanted to spend some time together before that evening. And so about 3:00, I believe her mother, Judy Wilson, arrived at her Renee's grandmother's house across the street, wanting to get her. I went over there and talked to her, and she was getting kind of mad because they weren't back. And even though it was before 4:00, that was like the ultimate time to return. If you're not here by 4, you're in trouble. And so by 3, she was there looking for her, I think. And so I sat there with them. Everybody was kind of mad. Where are these girls at? What are they doing? But that kind of turned into, well, it's 4:00 and they're still not back. And that's, they just didn't do that. That's not how, if you were told to be home at 4, you came home at 4.
I want to interject a moment and say something. You might feel we went over this same material with Kelly Arnold, the timeline. But it is so very important to ask the same questions and get an overall picture from everyone you can in these situations. Because the slightest memory, the most seemingly basic difference in such simple things as time and place could pivot the entire case in a new direction. So the girls weren't into drugs or drinking or anything like that. It wasn't like that. So if they said they were going to come back an hour late, that's one thing. But now it's after 4:00. They're not back yet.
Yeah, by then around 4, Judy went from being getting upset, mad because they weren't home, to starting getting worried. And at some point, she called her husband Richard Wilson and told him, "Hey, go try to find that Oldsmobile. Try to find these girls." And I think by 6:00, he had located the car at Seminary South. And then at that point, I think I couldn't leave, but there was no cell phones. There was no Answering machines, nothing. If you weren't there when the phone rang, you didn't get the call. So I was told, sit by this phone in case they call. So I didn't get to leave or go do anything, but supposedly Richard found the car and they contacted the police and the police came and then it went from there.
The first several hours and everyone's movements are important. Every minute after you realize someone is missing is a minute your perp has on the situation. Time is a clock working against you in every way. Having police come in and deem the situation a runaway means nobody is looking for them, in other words, at the most important time when they should be. Two family members had, as Terry put it, staked out the vehicle all night long and into December 24th, Christmas Eve day. They saw nothing. There has been some speculation about Rachel's husband and what he did and how he reacted to the news. Terry says Tommy was bowling that night. Someone went over to the bowling alley and told Tommy what was going on, and he is said to have finished his bowling game before leaving the bowling alley and heading home. If true, one could view that as sketchy behavior. But that is speculation in hindsight. He knows his wife of 6 months, one would guess. So perhaps he is thinking, she just went off somewhere and will be back. It's easy to think this way in these situations in the moment. You're not thinking about, nor do you believe, the worst. Your mind will go right to the simplest answer according to your own knowledge. So we cannot condemn the guy for finishing his bowling match if, in fact, that is what he did. When the night comes and they're not back and they find the car and next morning, is there a break at all in this? Or is there information that comes?
No, it's not like now. Your information was radio, newspaper, TV broadcast. I know eventually the papers ran that they were runaways, basically. That's what happened in the beginning. The Fort Worth police went, well, they just took off. These 3 girls just took off. And we all knew for sure these 3 girls didn't take off. There was no plan. Like I've tried to tell people, if there was a plan to run away and I was being asked to go, at some point they would probably tell me, hey, we're running away. Well, she was asking me to go because, like I say, we were now boyfriend and girlfriend. She was dying for me to go, and I said no. So,
Wait, if they were going to run away, why would
They didn't take any It got up to 70 degrees or so that day, even though it was right before Christmas. This is Texas. It was probably 70 degrees that day. They didn't really take jackets or anything, or coats, or money, or extra clothes, or anything. And then, to top it all off, they're driving a 2-year-old car. They're driving a 1972 Oldsmobile, and they're going to run off, so they ditch it? What kind of fool are you? All they could have done then was go walk over to I-35 and start hitching down the road. That wouldn't have happened. And I don't know. It's just, that's far-fetched to me. And then there's that whole thing with the letter. I know you know about it. Yeah, it's...
Let's take a break, come back, and get into this letter I have been milking for far too long now. One more glass of milk, and we'll dig into that important part of this case. I promise. You are listening to Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps. Allow me to just read this letter. It's very short and to the point. Quote, I know I'm going to catch it, but we had to get away. We're going to Houston. See you in about a week. The car is in Sears' upper lot. Love, Rachel. End of quote. That's it. That's the letter. It was addressed to Thomas, important way to write or say his name, Trelisa, at the house he lived in with Rachel. Let's talk about what is accurate in this letter. That the car is in the upper Sears lot. We can jump to the conclusion that only the person behind their abduction or Rachel herself could have written this letter. But anyone who knew the car was there could have penned the letter. So let's not go there. I asked Kelly Arnold her thoughts about the letter. When does the letter come? Where does it come?
The letter showed up at Tommy's house, which is Rachel's husband, the day after they disappeared. It got there about 10 a.m. that morning, depending on whose story you hear as to how it went. Again, I believe, my opinion is that there were two other people at the house, at least two other people, if not three other people at the house when the letter came. Tommy went out to the mailbox, came back in. He had the letter, and I've heard different stories from different people. The story that comes from Tommy, it's that, he read the letter, and then they took it over to Rachel's parents' house and called the police from there and had the police come over to their house versus Tommy's house. They only had the letter. They didn't have the envelope. And from what I understand, the police sent them back to go get the envelope. And there were hours in between this because they didn't bring the envelope back to my aunt and uncle's house. From my understanding is they took it to the police station later on.
That's one version, according to Kelly. There is a second version.
There's another story of two people who I believe were at the house, at Tommy's house, whenever the letter came. And they were lifelong friends of Tommy's. And they said that whenever the letter came, that Tommy, again, went out to the mailbox, which is kind of right there by the doors, like on the wall, on the wall, came back in, and that they were acting giddy, was their word, giddy. And that they would ball the letter up and then hold it up to the light in the window and looking at it and balling it up and holding it up to the light in the window. And that within that time period is whenever Tommy realized the misspelling of Rachel's name on the letter. And if you see the letter, the very end, it says Rachaee. And then the last E is wrote back over with a L. Within that window, which was about, they said they went there, but about 15 minutes, they were very uncomfortable and left. So I believe that is true. I wasn't there, so I can't say 100%, but I believe.
This is beyond bizarre. For one, if these girls decided to run away, they would have never taken Julie along to the mall. I think we've established that as a likely fact, but we do not know for sure. But I would say they would never have gone to the mall if they were planning to leave town. They would have taken that sweet-ass Oldsmobile they were driving and hightailed it out of town like Thelma and Louise, and what's more, I think, they would have showed up somewhere at some point, which they never have. The question we need to be asking is, what does the letter say beyond the words written on the page? And what does the presence of this letter tell us? This letter, it doesn't even do anything for the police besides just further their theory that they ran away.
That's it.
And it's almost like the person who sent the letter wanted them to believe that.
Yes.
And did they ever do a handwriting analysis of the letter?
There were multiple ones done against Rachel's. They were all inconclusive. There have been a couple of them done against Tommy's, both by the police department and independent as well. The independent states that she will go to court and testify in a court of law that he wrote both the envelope and letter. I have not heard firsthand from Fort Worth Police Department the response of theirs. The information I have on that is secondhand. And there was some conflict on whether they said that Tommy did not write either or that Tommy wrote the envelope and not the letter. So like I said, I haven't heard that directly from the police department. And I've really gotten to where no matter who tells it to me, unless I get it directly from that individual or that entity, I still have a question mark on it. I've just become that way. Sadly. Sadly.
The letter kind of brings the case into the Agatha Christie British crime drama realm of someone mucking around with people's lives just because they can. Or someone purposely trying to throw off police. Rachel would not address her husband as Thomas, another giveaway many have speculated. And how hard would it be for law enforcement, even back in 1974, to find a 9, 14, and 17-year-old running away on foot? Remember, the car was found. So they had to have either met someone else, a fourth person with a car, or taken off on foot and then caught a bus or some other public transport. None of that makes logical sense. I do not understand why this letter was never analyzed with any sort of urgency or competency. And also, why was it never processed in a way that could at least preserve any evidence on it? One of the more interesting aspects of the letter, no one believes it is Rachel's handwriting. That's big. Moreover, the letter appears fewer than 24 hours after the girls go missing and was postmarked locally and time-stamped from that same morning. The case had not even been publicized by then. So whoever sent the letter knew the girls had not returned from the mall and knew they were missing. Another contentious aspect of the letter is that a right-handed person, experts claim, wrote the letter. Rachel was left-handed. Then we come to the security guard. Yes, enter now a witness from the mall who claims to have information about the girls. Yet it's when this guy comes forward that is astounding and questionable. I'll get to that right after I take one more break. You are listening to Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps. Please, if you haven't, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts and leave me a glowing review. I was review bombed by some unruly, savage, obsessed fanatics of Karen Reed because they disliked my reporting of the facts in that case on my podcast, 34 Fairview Road. And I have been playing catch up ever since. I had a 4.9 rating at one point, and they dropped it by a solid point. So if you can, help me to get that rating back up to what it once was. I'd be very grateful. When I look into a case like this one, I must be honest and say the biggest obstacle in solving it is the incompetence of police who either did not know what they were doing, judged the victims morally, totally dropped the ball, or had no training whatsoever to look into such a case and should have called in the FBI right away. Even the Texas Rangers, perhaps. But then ego gets involved, right? Stymies any progress, gets in the way of any true investigative prowess. And so there you have it, a cluster F in the making, and truckloads of speculation and unsubstantiated facts begin floating around. Nobody knows what is fact, what is fiction. Take the security guard angle, for instance.
There were 2 security guards who were questioned. I think Dan. I don't know a whole lot about him. I do know that I don't believe his property was searched. The other one, his account is like 20 years later, well, about 25 years later, he comes forward and he says that he saw the girls, or not necessarily, he didn't say that they 100% that they were our girls, but that night whenever he was like roping off the parking lot after the mall had closed, that he saw a little yellow truck, which is what the security guard trucks looked like, and said that there were 3 girls in the truck with him, and security officer wasn't supposed to be on that part of the parking lot, and he asked him what he was doing over there, and he said like a swear word, and the girls, then, you know, when he saw the girls, he was like, oh, well, excuse me for my language, and they were like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. That was his account. I've seen his name mentioned in other notes from very, very, very early on that are not the same account. It doesn't have anything to do with seeing this security guard in the mall parking lot at all. It has to do with him seeing the girls at Dairy Queen after they disappeared. And those notes were from like 1975, maybe.
So he injects himself into this years later and starts to tell a story.
Yes, but it doesn't match the notes that are there from 75. But whenever I saw his name, it just really kind of stuck out to me. And I was like, that's totally not the same story.
And did they ever look into him?
Not to my knowledge.
That information feels kind of fitting for this type of case. High profile, all over the news by then, anniversary reporting every 5 or 10 years, and suddenly someone recalls something. It means nothing, really. There is nothing substantial about any of it. And I'd like to go back to Sandra Harcum again, Julie's aunt, who you heard in the last episode. I asked her specifically about Julie.
Oh, she was just a sweet little girl, and people say, oh, what was, there wasn't really anything outstanding about her. She was just your typical 9-year-old girl. She was a little tomboy. I know she was looking so forward to Christmas because my mother had bought her a denim pantsuit, and she had to try it on to see that it fit, but my mother wouldn't let her have it right then. She had to wait till Christmas, and she was really excited about that pantsuit that she never even got to wear.
Tell me a little bit about what your sister is saying, thinking, feeling, and what happens next.
Well, after a while, after a day or two, she told me, she said, I think the older girl's parents know what happened or know where they are, and they're afraid to say anything because they're afraid I'll get them for kidnapping. I wish in hindsight we had reported Julie as being kidnapped because maybe more would have been done to try to find them at the time.
And why did she think that, Sandy?
I don't know. It was just a feeling that she had. I maybe because of the way they acted or something. She was around them. I wasn't, so I don't know how they were acting, but she just said she felt like they knew something and they weren't saying. And
so, what goes on from there? How does it progress from there?
Well, I know the middle girl's mother absolutely haunted the police department to find out what was going on and everything. In fact, I think they, at some point, the detectives started slipping out the back door so they wouldn't have to face her. My sister she and her husband had separated right before Julie disappeared, and she was working. She had just got a new job, or she was off, I think, about a week, and then she had to go back to work because she couldn't afford to lose her job. People were out, just trying to find out what was going on. I came across something at a laundromat. There was a poster of a missing girl from Arlington, Texas, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's what we need to do. So I called my sister and I said, look, we need flyers, we need posters. And she called the other families and they did get that together, the flyers and the posters. And we started distributing them. And there was a lady that saw one of the posters and got in contact with me. And my husband and I went to her house. I don't know if you'd call her a psychic or what she was, but she told us there's a creek that runs through some of South Fort Worth into Mansfield, Texas. And she said, you need to look at that creek because if you don't find them in this creek, you're never going to find them. So my husband and some of his family, they walked that creek 3 times and never found anything. So I gave the information to the other families and they walked it too and didn't find anything. So I don't know what that lady said might be true, because she said if we didn't find them there, we'd never find them. And basically my sister, they would call, the police would call this and that, and she'd go down there. They got a random call, an anonymous call that they were coming in on the bus from Houston, which the older girl's husband got a letter the next day saying they had gone to Houston. So they all went down to the bus stop. They weren't there. She got several crank calls.
Look, I get the whole psychic thing and the need to get involved, and perhaps even how much of a pull that intuition is for someone claiming to have an ability to see things. I am not judging you for it. But for the love of God, please think about what you are doing before contacting a victim's family. The last thing they need is false hope. I asked Kelly to talk us through what happens next, because there are a few major twists in the case coming.
Are there any other breaks in the case, if you will?
There were quite a few searches when John Swaim, he was the very first private investigator. He was hired by the families. And a lot of times he and the police department would get the same information. And the police department wouldn't really follow up on it, but he would follow up on it. I feel if John Swaim had have lived, I really feel like he possibly could have solved this case. I feel like he was very devoted to this case. He was crazy. He had different antics. He was out there and wild, and he had kind of questionable methods. But sometimes that's what it takes to get the job done. And whatever it took, he would do. But he really pushed a lot of the searches. He would contact other police agencies and have them have their prisoners out there helping search for the girls. I kind of have a fascination of him in and of himself.
Next week, concluding this special Crossing the Line trilogy of episodes, we'll get into those water searches for a car some have speculated is connected to the girl's disappearance. And also, some of the wilder theories about the case over the years, and, as well, a few new updates. That'll do it for this week. Be safe, be aware. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinas, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.